Hello and welcome back to Inside the Process, where you join me not just in my living room, but into my space, my creative space, and I'll share some experiences and thoughts and maybe insights, if I have them, about making music. Hopefully you'll find it interesting or helpful or, not entirely a waste of time. We do this every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. here on my Joe Holt's Notes 2021 YouTube channel until it's 2022. I haven't actually said that, that's implied, and then you'll find it there. So that's only a few weeks away. Wow. Time flies when you're having fun, or as I like to spoonerize, time's fun when you're having flies. And I sometimes don't care if I make sense. Well, I do here. Thank you for those of you who support and encourage me through the methods available by the support link of my website or through that link that you'll see in the description. Thank you for considering that. Helps keep this going. So, our theme or topic tonight is the Christmas in every key. That's what I called it. And here we are in that Christmas season. Do we all agree on that, actually? I guess we all accept it. Many of us, including me, embrace it totally. Some of us don't. Some of us like it's too soon. But where we are culturally, it's kind of accepted now that it's full steam ahead. So the question, when does the Christmas season begin? Well, if you asked it in general commercial culture terms and in terms of the church calendar, there at least was some agreement-ish where Thanksgiving is positioned. And as soon as Thanksgiving is over, bang, right? So let's start there and just say, yeah, Christmas time is here. And I'm actually going to stop myself. There will be primarily Christmas music in here for illustrative purposes. But this is not my marker that, hey, all you're going to get from me between now and the end of the year and now and Christmas is Christmas. No. So I needed to say that so I didn't scare some of you off. Here we go. of course, you know where that's from, right? The Charlie Brown Christmas special. That's my thing, as you know, I'm sure. So the tradition in the culture, in our culture, is that the Christmas season begins as soon as Thanksgiving is over. And the way I used to illustrate it back in the day, decades ago, really, was the big Christmas parades. And what would you have at the very end, the very last float of the big Christmas parade? But Santa Claus, right? And in that big Christmas parade, Santa Claus would bring up the rear, like the caboose of the parade, but then stop, ascend the stairs to wherever his Santa Claus throne is, and preside over the beginning of Christmas. And to me, that symbolically meant, even though the parade was during the day, symbolically meant, okay, Thanksgiving is over. Now Santa Claus shows up. Now we begin Christmas. And that's how it's worked, right? Or at least how it used to work. But when Santa Claus is here, the culture's engaged. Now, of course, the church calendars, different emphasis, obviously, but here they kind of coincide, right? Old Santa Claus brings it in. All right, little detour, little parentheses, because I'm observing myself playing and realizing I'm not doing a good job of stating the melody, am I? Uh, and sometimes I get sloppy with that. And that would be a jazz player thing that can be a legitimate criticism. That where's the tune? Now, who was it? Was it Coleman Hawkins? I'm going to be no. Now I don't remember who had the big recording of Body and Soul in 1933. Big hit, sold zillions of everything or whatever. And he didn't touch the melody of Body and Soul. But typically you play the tune first. And I got about 3/4 of the way through and realized I wasn't stating the melody, the first time. So it's always this, I don't want to say balancing act. It's more like the acknowledgement that the melody of a tune is what drives everything about it, where everything of it comes from. And if there's absolutely no reference to it ever, it disrupts the relationship with the tune. Yeah, this is not exactly the same thing, but it reminds me of the one time I saw Chick Corea in concert solo, and he, I'm not sure I remember this nuance correctly, but it was obvious that the audience wanted him to play Spain, and he didn't want to play Spain. He didn't want to play any of his tunes because he was just using the tunes as improvisational vehicles. So he wasn't really going to be playing his tunes. So he didn't want his tunes to be subjected to his, total improvisation and annihilation of the reference to the tune, almost. So that was interesting. But, it's tied into this dynamic of playing the melody, which is not what today is about. So somebody needs to remind me. I'm going to just write it here, and then I'll forget it's here. I'm writing play the melody. That could be a topic of all its own. All right. So the idea of Thanksgiving immediately giving way to Christmas is the old school template. And speaking of parades, I remember I was in my 20s, and I got randomly called to play this Christmas parade. I believe I've told this story before, but it's appropriate to tell here. And it was for the town of Salem, New Jersey, and it was like, half hour or so from where I was living, 40 minutes maybe, whatever. And I don't know that particular parade was Thanksgiving Day. It might have been the Saturday after Thanksgiving, but it followed the template where Santa Claus was the last thing in the parade. And I guess they called it the Christmas parade, but it still to me had the same sort of, pageantry leading up to Santa Claus and closing, one thing to open the other at the same time, right? So I didn't know the people. I didn't know anything. Somebody knew me from somewhere or got my name or however that works, right? But I was told that there would be a keyboard, a Fender Rhodes probably, back in that day. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's what it was. On a flat bed with Santa Claus. There'd be a generator operating the keyboard and the amp, and my job was to play basically sing-along music. So as Santa Claus was coming through the town, people would be able to sing and be festive and merry and all of that, right? So that was cool. But as often happens with me, I got a little tangled up getting there. That didn't sound good to say, as often happens with me. But put it this way. I try to avoid, and I think I have, a reputation for being late, but I'll never get a reputation for being early. Let's leave it at that. But it was compounded by me trying to get to the parade, and like all the streets being closed, this is of course way pre-GPS, and not knowing how to work around and find a location, and directions that the person gave me did not account for those closures. So I did make it, though. I pulled into the lot where the parade was about to start. Everybody was lining up, and I got to the float a whole like 10 seconds before the float pulled away. Right? So I didn't have a chance to acclimate myself other than to be pointed to, here's the piano, go play. Right? But the float was huge. Right? The float, the flatbed, was as long as flatbed I could imagine, and way on the other end, hello, was Santa Claus in his Santa Claus sleigh, but no presents in the sleigh, rather children from the Sunday school of a local church, with the pastor of the church also there supervising the kids. So that's all good, that's fine. And so we're going through, and I'm playing, whatever tunes I'm playing. I didn't play just one tune. I just cycled through the whole Christmas repertoire. This is, I didn't tell you that story yet, so let me not go there. And everything was fine until we got to a certain tune. Then it became a little odd. It was this tune. Okay, that's embarrassing. Ha! I don't know how the alarm got set on my tablet, but I don't really have a lot of editing capability for this, so we're just going to plow ahead. Sorry about that. I sort of finished the tune, but I knew you could hear that, and I realized what it was, and it wasn't going to go away quickly. But just to help me in my little illustration, I'm going to kind of finish the tune. There we go. Walking in a Winter Wonderland, you know that tune, right? Which is a romanticized way of saying I'm walking in snow, which does not necessarily seem romantic, right? I'm walking in snow and my feet are cold and wet and I want a hot chocolate. They don't frame it like that. All right, so yeah, so I'm playing that tune as we're driving down the main street of Salem, and a parade of people, or lots of people there. It's a long time ago, but I remember it. And as I'm playing that tune, at a certain point in the tune, the pastor of the church is trying to get my attention. I mean, very obviously, and after a while, kind of annoyingly. He's just doing all this, and I'm like, well, what? And after a while, I had to ignore him. And I don't know if he probably persisted until he realized I was ignoring him. Because it's like, you're ridiculous. I have a job to do, right? So when the parade is over, because keep in mind, which is why I told you I got there at the last second, I didn't have a chance to meet anybody or be introduced to anybody or talk to anybody. So I get off the float and he approaches me and he says, I'd like to introduce myself to you. I'm Parson Brown. So what he was doing is, in the meadow, we can build a snowman and pretend that, well, actually, in his case, and pretend that he's a circus clown. But he was jumping on and pretend that he is Parson Brown. And I didn't take him seriously at all. I mean, after the parade, I looked at him and I said, no, you're not, right? And then here's this little Sunday school kid standing next to him, right out of like a Bugs Bunny cartoon, right? Oh, yes, he is. He's Parson Brown. His name is Tim Brown, and he's the pastor of my church. He's Pastor Brown. He's Parson Brown. Well, fine. I felt like I was in a Bugs Bunny cartoon at that moment. Yeah, he even tried to persuade me that he was that Parson Brown. I said, you're not old enough, buddy. Okay? Now, I'm kind of busting on him a little bit because we kind of became friends after that. And, oh my goodness, he's a trip. He was a trip. He was the pastor of the Presbyterian Church in Salem, but he actually lived outside of Philadelphia. So he wasn't really local to the community. And I wound up running across him not long after that in the Philadelphia Protestant Home, which is one of the retirement facilities that I worked at for years and years and years. I did all the levels there, and I was there as a music therapist, on the time that he saw me. And actually, the time that I ran into him in the hall, I was actually scheduled to be a guest musician in his church service, which was near the home, uh, on the following Sunday morning, I think, or some Sunday soon thereafter. Uh, it was I know this thing happens, but it's the only time I experienced it where there was a wedding officiated in the Sunday morning service. That can happen. Uh, and I suppose that was part of why I was there. I don't even remember what I did. I know I played the service, but then, what my particular role was, uh, I don't remember. But what caught my attention that day was that he was wearing this really loud Bugs Bunny tie. He was that kind of guy. Well, maybe I was too, because I said to him, well, what do you know? I have that same tie. I should have looked for it. I didn't even think about that. So I could hold it up, right? Right? All that. And he said, oh, good. Well, wear it to church when you come, and I'll wear the same tie. Well, actually, no, he didn't say it. He says, wear it to church when you come. And I objected. I said, that's not a tie for church. I'm not going to wear that in church. No, I'll wear the same tie. It'll be fine. We'll match. I'm like, okay. I have this thing where I'll eventually say okay to the pastor of the church who wants me to do something I'm not inclined to do. So I played the prelude of the service, and I'm there, my loud Bugs Bunny tie, which does not belong in church. And he comes out to begin to officiate the service wearing his clerical robe. So didn't matter what tie he was wearing, you didn't see it, and I wanted to kill him. It's like, Jim, no, you hung me out here. That was, he was a guy. He was. That has nothing to do with the theme. All right. Except that, talking about church, the Christian Advent calendar does coordinate with Christmas beginning when Thanksgiving is over. The Sunday after Thanksgiving, first Sunday in Advent, which is actually not the same as the Christmas season in the culture. In fact, very, very much not the same. But it does acknowledge, that we've transitioned into it. But the thing about Advent in the church calendar, for those who adhere to it, which would be more the old traditionalist, not the more broadly speaking evangelical, side of the church, who just, hey man, when the Christmas season comes, it's Christmas carols, wham. But the Advent calendar is like preparing yourself for the arrival. Therefore, no, you're not going to sing Away in the Manger. You're not going to sing Silent Night. You're not going to sing Angels We Have Heard on High until the day, right? And then those in that camp might relent the Sunday before Christmas, might. Because, of course, by then the congregation is like, give me the implied expletive Christmas carols, right? Because all you're hearing on the radio for like almost a month now is, oh, the weather outside is frightful. Well, give me my Jesus now, please. So there's actually a tension between the Christmas culture and the traditional church calendar. And it's Christmas Eve in that service that approach to the Christian church opens the floodgates, and then you can sing Silent Night when everybody's been wanting to sing it for the last month. And yeah, so in some churches, the closest you're going to get for the next few weeks is something like this. Hurry up! No. Yeah. So now we go to a part where I'm going to kind of stay and dwell for a while. And this now gets more to the every key part of Christmas. And that's when I had that shopping mall food court gig that I've told you about. And I would have it for 11 years. But the first few years were wall-to-wall full-time all year. After a while, they did it more of a special events. They did it during the Christmas season and some other times of the year. But it was kind of my life, living in the shopping mall, playing typically for lunch, 6 or might have been 7 days a week. Actually, back then, when I started, the culture was still pretty traditional. Maybe the mall was open on Sunday. By then, yeah, it probably was. Because Chick-fil-A was closed. Chick-fil-A was in the Cherry Hill Mall. But I worked for the marketing department of the mall. And I would have actually periodic meetings with the marketing department. Because my justification for being there was that I was part of the mall experience. Therefore, I needed to be interactive. And I told you about this music menu I had to make up so people could walk it up to me. And when Santa Claus showed up, which when I started there was the traditional day after Thanksgiving, me, like the rest of the mall, or I, like the rest of the mall, had to flip the switch and be wall-to-wall Christmas. And there was no negotiation on that, but I was not inclined to negotiate. I was okay with, like, if nothing else, the challenge of taking those tunes and making them work and doing different things with them and seeing how I could, stretch and mold and how many I could learn and, of course, not repeating any in a particular day and then seeing how far I could go beyond that without repeating any. On the occasion where I had to put a sub in, I couldn't get any of the subs, I don't believe, to agree to wall-to-wall Christmas. Most musicians is like, man, no. I'm kind of strange in that department. But they play all the Christmas tunes you can stand and then play other things and hope I don't get any, repercussions from the mall. No one noticed those occasions, I guess. But for myself, I kept it, wall to wall. So, it's like just allow tunes to be tunes. Treat Christmas tunes as regular tunes. So, one of the many things, and I only remember this because I did it on my "Do You Hear What I Hear" Christmas CD that I recorded later. I'm going to play this hymn, and I want you to see if you can identify what is subtly different about it. This Christmas carol, actually. could you tell that something was a little different? Now, if you're a musician watching this, perhaps or likely, you did kind of land on what happened. I took the tune and instead of having it in 4/4, put it in 5. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And actually, yeah, you count to 5, but what you feel, this is a little off this subject, but I think that's not a bad thing. What you feel when you have a meter like that that's not 2, 3, or 4 is some combination of 2 and 3. Okay? And you feel the block of 3 and the block of 2, or you could feel the block of 2 and the block of 3. So structurally, you count it like this: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1. You notate it in 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but because there is a primary start of the measure, but it's alternating 3, 4, and 2, 4. Now, of course, you could take a tune like that and do all sorts of other kind of more normal things, like a bossa nova. More active, not a bossa. Waltz. I think that was a little bit too, this is a straight waltz, a little too overt. But then when you're dealing with a hymn like that, if Christmas Carol, there are certain things you want to do and certain things you don't. So there are of course other considerations other than just what can I do. And again, I'm detouring all over the place, but I think it's probably helpful. So I'm was watching a what do you call it? A little promotional spot for Branford Marsalis's recent CD that he did with Kurt Elling, and one of the guys in the band was talking about Branford and saying, he's an unusual jazz saxophone player because he connects with the emotion of the tune. I'm like, well, thank you, right? And he says most guys just do things because they can, and he's actually being connected to the tune. I'm like, yes, thank you. So in the jazz world, it's like, what can you do and what can you, demonstrate about your prowess, or how can you best express the tune? And of course, what I was doing there, moving around styles, was not the best expression of the tune. I think a better expression. See, the 5/4 doesn't get in the way. It just affects the cadence a little bit. Oh, come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. as opposed to yes, like oh come all ye faithful to the Mardi Gras parade for right. So anywho, uh, yeah. So actually, I didn't put this part in. I'm going to put this part in right now, even though it kind of disrupts the flow, which is not too many years in, maybe 2 or 3, 4. Uh, the mall went the way of the culture, or the culture went the way of the mall or something, and Santa Claus started showing up before Thanksgiving. So I kept saying back in the day about that because that broke down, that Thanksgiving being the wall before Christmas. Because I think they realized that they could sell more pictures with Santa Claus. If Santa Claus was there longer, they wouldn't have done it if it didn't work. Which is my comeback to people saying, why is the stores put out their Christmas stuff and it's barely Halloween, or it's not even Halloween yet, or it's certainly not Thanksgiving. I don't want to see Christmas aisles in the store. Well, one, for shopping, and this is me, I can only see anything in the big context, right? If you're going to be shopping, you're going to be shopping before Christmas, before you're going to be celebrating Christmas or in that season, because you have to have your stuff, right? And you want to get it done ahead of time. So shopping does not necessarily equate to the experience. But then, this is where it all gets kind of muddied up. That experience is brought into the shopping because of what you're shopping for, and then the experience is altered because now it's happening when it really wasn't happening, and it was only happening because people wanted to buy the stuff to make it happen. I don't know if that's the entire vicious circle part of it, but to me, I can't get away from at least some of that. So. And of course, I love to see Christmas. So the first Christmas I'll see in a store walking down, even if it's September, I'm going to stop and I'm going to smile because it all makes me happy. But for people who get annoyed by it, is they're starting Christmas too soon. They wouldn't be doing it if people weren't buying it. And they're not necessarily buying it because they've decorated their yard already. They're buying it so that they're ready to decorate their yard, kind of thing. But I'll tell you, it was awkward. Especially the first year, and now it's mid-November, and I have to play wall-to-wall Christmas music. I didn't like that because I was so stuck in. We haven't had our Thanksgiving parade yet, and Santa Claus hasn't ascended the throne. He's not here. You have some hologram of Santa up there, and Santa Claus is still at the North Pole because he ain't coming until he's ready, kind of thing, right? All right, so. Another sort of illustration of what you can do to a tune, stylistically, is one thing. Moving it around keys, modulating is a kind of big thing. Happens all the time, and that became a little exercise for me too. And I'll confess, I'm not one of these guys who pulls off every key equally. And in the jazz world, that's like a big thing. It's like you practice everything in all 12 keys all the time. The keys shouldn't matter. Well, I mean, I do some of that, but I don't really position myself or see myself as a jazz guy. You'll see on my Facebook page this quote from Dave McKenna. And I came across it watching an interview maybe a year ago of him later in life. And so this wasn't in print anywhere, but it's verbatim what he said because I wrote it down verbatim in the interview. He said, as I get older, I consider myself less of a jazz player and more of a song player. Totally get that, right? Because he's expressing the tunes, right? And in jazz today, in the contemporary jazz world, it's really about, again, what you can do, what your prowess is. But, So if I were to demonstrate, hey, I'm going to play Don Lee on all 12 keys, I will fall all over myself. So, and I'm willing to admit that because that's not my world in jazz. But a tune like the 12 Days of Christmas, I think I can pull that off. And that was like 12 days, 12 keys, yeah. So I remember starting that when I was at the wall because it let me play it longer. It let me make it more interesting. I didn't have to play, because actually you're playing the same thing over and over and over and over. So if you vary the key, like vary anything, vary the volume, vary the tempo, vary the key, of course, as appropriate, right? When you have repeating stuff, that's just a basic musical principle, right? So let's take the 12 Days of Christmas. Let me just take the first day. I won't go like tick through the days yet. I almost tripped in the key I always play. That's funny. Right? Now, I use the word transpose, but I'm going to spend a minute talking about this, and I'll talk about this more later. The idea of being able to improvise and hearing where to go. And you hear where to go, not because you know what note it is, but because you know where it is based on its relationship both to the key and to the note that came before. First day of Christmas. Okay, on the first day of Christmas, we'll stop there. So, if I were to like go up to the very next note, a half step. Right? So that's that on the first day of Christ, right? In all the 12 keys. In interval ear training, that interval is a perfect fourth, right? It's also here, which is a dated reference because no bride comes down the aisle to that anymore. But that's a sound, right? And if you are an improviser, you want to know where that sound is, right? And it shouldn't matter what key you're in. You need to find that sound to play Here Comes the Bride or the First Day of Christ or just anything, you know, that. So, the first day of Christmas. On the first day of Christmas, etc. Right? So, so just for fun, we'll do. And yeah, I do this. People, how do you do that? Well, you kind of know where the notes are, and then you play them because you don't think about their labels. Right? You'll hear me say about that is, can you talk to somebody when you're required to spell all the words as you're speaking them? Oh, that kind of would set your brain on fire after a while. So you don't think, I'm not thinking about this is an F sharp, this is a this is a that chord. It's just, where is it? What's the reference? What's the meaning? Because when we think about words we're going to use, we don't think about the words, we think about the meaning, because we can access the words without thinking about them as words, right? And we go to greater meaning. So, okay, that's enough of that. Okay, so what I do is I'm going to start in E so I can wind up in E flat, right? Because the key just below where I start is going to be where I end up, because I'm going to go chromatically. Which is not maybe the theoretically most pristine way to order keys, which would be more going in fourths, but actually if you go up, you're adding excitement each time too. So that's another strategic thing of how you arrange something. So anyhow, there, climb the mountain. Christmas in every key, or at least in all 12 keys. Oh my goodness. So I did play all Christmas music though, and I didn't say I wasn't going to today, but I'm not going to like from now to Christmas. And still though, I could play something seasonal. How about this one? And I never actually thought about playing this to button up your overcoat. Playing this, I could have probably gotten away with that. It was like It's a Baby, It's Cold Outside, which you're not supposed to do anymore, but we are doing. So while you're watching this, I left this out on the piano just because it was sitting there. While you're watching this, if you're watching it live, this little series at the Pines in Rehoboth is happening simultaneously here, concurrently. And it's a series by the True Blue Jazz Festival. Of course, curiously, not all the shows are jazz, go figure. But every Wednesday night during this month at the showroom that they have access to down in Rehoboth, they do a different themed Christmas thing. And this is the Eddie Sherman Christmas Show featuring Peggy Rady, Holly Lane. Because it's always about the singers, and the instrumentalists are just kind of there so the singers can sing. Now that's, well, yeah. So that's happening, and Baby is cold. That's why I said it says Baby is cold outside. Sherman, he doesn't care. And actually, Rehoboth, yeah, don't care. So anyway, not exactly Christmas now. So the reason I wanted to do this today is so that it was the first installment of this series after Thanksgiving, to position it as the, other side of that wall. But between now and Christmas, I just see myself doing regular topics and stuff, not Christmas soon. So you don't have to think, I'm not watching him again until January. Or maybe you'll decide that anyway. I don't know. All right. So one more little, okay, I got to do this. I played Christmas Time this year. I got to go out with this. Because in my world, it's all Charlie Brown Christmas all the time. Gee, Charlie Brown, they still make wooden Christmas trees? Of all the Charlie Browns in the world, you're the Charlie Browniest. Man, I never know what's going to happen. But thank you for being here. Hope to see you next week and tomorrow night on my Joe Holt's Notes YouTube channel for Piano for My Friends. Thanks so much. Oh. Not yet. Oops. As I knock things over.